Hello, music theory lovers out there in Cyberverse. Hope you enjoyed my little treatment of some classic tunes just there. Let's put that away. Alright, so tonight, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thanks for being here on time. Tonight we're going to be talking about music theory 2, because we've already done music theory 1 or music theory basics. This is the second installment of music theory knowledge that I'm going to be sharing with you tonight. I've got Mr. Geordie here. He is monitoring the technology, such as the placement of the camera and making sure the microphone's picking me up and whatnot. Making sure I'm supplied with chocolates and hot drinks and so on. So, put up your feet, get comfortable at home, grab yourself a beverage, and we're going to dive into some music theory. So, here's the overview. Tonight we're going to be covering these three big topics. Number 1, intervals, the distance between notes. Number 2, scales, which are sets of tones from which you can build melodies and harmonies, as you just heard a little preview of just now. And chords, which is a group of notes sounding simultaneously. And here we go, nice little, probably maybe the world's most famous barbershop quartet right there. Okay, so let's dive into section 1, intervals. Now, as always, guys, please write your questions in the chat function, and Geordie will read out the questions to me so we can answer your questions as we go along. So remember to write them in. So section 1 is intervals, the distances between notes. Okay, what is an interval? In music, an interval is the distance from one note to another. The smallest interval used in Western music is a semitone or half step. I got my little keyboard here, so here's what a semitone sounds like. Kind of sounds like the theme from Jaws, if you know that movie. That's a semitone, or also called a minor second. We'll get to that soon. So all intervals used in Western music can be counted by how many semitones they contain. For example, a major third is comprised of 4 semitones. So if I start on C, and you can see here in the diagram down the bottom here, from C to E is a major third. And if I count up the semitones, so I start on C, one semitone up is C sharp, then D sharp, then E. That is a major third. We'll get to some more intervals soon, but it's important to know that the semitone is the kind of like the building block. It's the smallest one that we use. Now you can, of course, go smaller than a semitone or narrower than a semitone. In Western music, we don't do that so much because we use like an equal tempered scale. More about that in a future lesson. So yeah, our octave from C to C is divided up into 12 semitones. Moving on. How many intervals are there? Well, there is an infinite number of intervals, for there is an infinite number of notes and combinations. But the 12 most commonly used intervals are those up to and including the octave from C to C on the piano. This is what an octave sounds like. So if you're familiar with The Wizard of Oz, it sounds like the start of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Somewhere over the rainbow, somewhere. So that is kind of the widest interval that we talk about. We can go beyond an octave, of course, and we have compound intervals. So if you have an octave plus a smaller interval, say an octave plus a major third, then that's a compound interval. But an octave is kind of the most commonly used name for a big interval. So here is a chart with all of the intervals from a minor second, which is 1 semitone, to an octave, 12 semitones. including the interval quality. So that's the additional name that goes with the interval. So the qualities are perfect, major, minor, diminished, and augmented. I'm not really going to go into that too much today, why they're called that. But I am going to play you through all the different intervals. So this is a minor second. This is a major second. This is a minor third. This is a major third. This is a perfect fourth. This is an augmented fourth, also called a diminished fifth, also called a tritone. This is a perfect fifth. Baritones and basses, you get used to hearing the sound of a perfect fifth. This is a minor sixth. This is a major sixth. This is a minor seventh. This is a major seventh. And this is an octave. Cool. And just a note there on the side, each interval does not have to start on C. I was just playing them on C, but you can start on any note. So your starting point can be F or F sharp or G or whatever. Oops. Yeah, so don't think that it's always fixed to C. That is not the case. You can move around. Alright, how can I identify intervals? You can train your ear to recognize different musical intervals. Using an app such as Earworthy is a good way to develop your ear. I'm going to show you the app Earworthy in a second. But a shortcut is to memorize some songs that feature a particular interval prominently, for example at the start of the melody. So here is a chart with intervals and popular songs that feature a particular musical interval. I'll just run, I'm not going to run through all of these, but I'll probably do all the ascending ones. So on this column here, we've got ascending intervals. So that's when you go from the low note to the higher note. Over here we've got some examples of descending intervals where it's going down instead. Unison. So when you hear the same note twice in a row, that's like the start of Twinkle Twinkle. Twinkle. A minor second sounds like the Jaws theme. Especially if you go long, short, that's a minor second. A major second, the first two notes of a major scale, so if you just imagine your head, da, 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 do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, that's a major second at the start of that. But you can also think, happy birthday, so when you go from happy up to birth, then that's a major second. Happy birthday. A minor third, you can hear at the start of Greensleeves. So that's a minor third at the start. A major third sounds like this. And it's like the first two notes of When the Saints Go Marching In. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Oh, when. That's a major third. Perfect fourth. This one is an extremely common interval to start a piece of music. For example, it sounds like Amazing Grace. Amazing Grace. Or Advance Australia Fair. Australians, oh let us rejoice. Or Here Comes the Bride. There are many songs that start with a perfect fourth. It's a good one to memorize. So next one is a tritone, also known as an augmented fourth or a diminished fifth. Sounds like this. So we hear that in Maria from West Side Story. Maria, 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 Maria. Also in The Simpsons. The Simpsons. by Danny Elfman, great TV show theme. Next we've got a perfect fifth. This is also an extremely common one. So I always think of Star Wars. The opening sequence from Star Wars. Also, if you like some more sci-fi, 2001 Space Odyssey had this piece by Richard Strauss. So it starts with an open fifth. Ba, ba. That's a fifth. Also from The Sound of Music, my favorite things. Raindrops and roses and whiskers on kittens. Raindrops. So when you go that first interval there. Raindrops. Minor sixth. I didn't actually go and look up this song. But She's a Woman by the Beatles apparently has that interval somewhere in it. My love. It always reminds me of one of the musical themes from the King Kong movie, the Peter Jackson King Kong. For some reason, that's stuck in my head as a good example of that interval. But that's what just through association, that's what I think of. A major sixth, we hear also very common at the start of tunes. My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. So, my Bonnie lies. That first interval is a major sixth, which of course you know from My Wild Irish Rose. My Wild Irish Rose, and maybe Shine on Me. Oh, shine on me. All of these tunes have that same interval at the start, the major sixth. A minor seventh. Okay, cool. So one really well-known one, also from West Side Story, is Somewhere. So there's a place for us. So if you remember how that melody goes. There's a place for us. If you're a fan of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and who isn't, then you might remember this riff that goes like. So that first interval ba, ba, is a minor seventh. Major seventh. So here we've got, if you know Take On Me by a-ha. Take me on. That major seventh interval appears in that song. And the octave, which we already talked about, is Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Somewhere over the rainbow. So that's all of the intervals between unison and an octave. And when we go beyond that, we sort of start talking about compound intervals. So an octave plus a second is a ninth. And then an octave plus a third is a tenth. And then an 11th, and so on. It just keeps going. So, but I usually say an octave plus a third instead of saying a tenth, because everyone's like, oh, what tenth? What? But most people will go a third. Okay, third plus an octave. Okay, that makes sense. Have we got any questions coming through yet? Nope. All right, good. I must be teaching really well today. Okay. So let's go on to the next section, which is scales. We probably will come back and look at some interval stuff because it will relate later on. So section 2, scales, or how the notes are grouped into families and keys, including major and minor. Okay, what is a scale? This is from Google. A scale is the tonal basis of music. It is a set of tones from which you can build melodies and harmonies. The tones of a scale are ordered according to their pitch, so usually from lowest to highest. Since scales create various distinctive moods, atmospheres, and tonal flavors, there are as many scales as there are cultures around the world. Here's something that's important to know, especially if you're new to music. Scales and keys are related. If a song is in the key of G major, you can expect to see notes from the G major scale, and usually a handful of notes from outside the key as well. But the main palette of sounds that you draw on will be from the G major scale if the song is in the key of G. In Western music, we mostly use major and minor scales, though many other scales do exist. I thought I should briefly mention a couple of other cool scales, like the pentatonic scale, which has only 5 notes. Which is really good for if you're improvising, using those 5-note scales, because you can't go too far wrong if you're practicing with a pentatonic scale. It all sounds pretty good, works well together. Another cool scale which you might be familiar with is the blues scale, which goes like this. Yeah, so the blues scale is fun to improvise with as well. I just thought I'd mention a couple of extra scales that we're not going to go into, but they're fun and you can do some research on them later on if you like. Okay, let's move on. Okay, major scales. Much Western music, maybe even most Western music, is built on the major scale, also known as the Ionian mode. So the 7 major modes, there are 7 major modes derived from the major scale, and we call number 1 the Ionian mode, which is a major scale. Every major scale, no matter the fundamental, which is the starting note, has the same pattern of tones and semitones. So remember our semitone is the smallest building block we've got, the smallest interval. So from like C to C sharp is a semitone. I didn't say it before, but a tone is twice that. So from C to D is a tone, also known as a major second. So the major scale is built out of patterns of tones and semitones, and it goes like this: tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. So here's how the major scale sounds. So I'm playing what you're seeing on the screen there. So it's starting on C. The first interval is a tone, then it goes up another tone, then it goes up a semitone to F, then it goes up a tone to G, then up a tone to A, then up a tone to B, and then finally a semitone up to C. So there are 2 semitones in there, from E to F and from B to C. Think of this pattern as the DNA of the major scale, because no matter your starting note, that pattern is the same. So if I'm going to start, let's just start on E instead, then I'm going to go tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. That's why all major scales kind of sound the same, because they have that same pattern of tones and semitones. So yeah, think of that as the DNA of the major scale. Let's go on. Yes. So here is a big chart with all the major scales in flat keys. So let me zoom in a little bit. So this one up here. So we got C major, which has no flats, and then we have F major, which has 1 flat, and then we get to B flat major, which has 2 flats, and so on. It just fills out all the flats. Though each of these scales have different notes, they all have the same DNA. Each major scale follows the same pattern of tones and semitones. Tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. The scale degrees have been marked in these examples. To mark the scale degrees, the first note in the scale is scale degree 1, the second note is scale degree 2, and so on. that comes to bear later on. So it might be worth just noting that when we talk about scale degrees, we're just talking about which note in the scale it is. So is it the first note or the second note or the third note or whatever. I believe our next page is the sharp keys. Yes, so this is the same thing, but now our keys have sharps instead. So C major has no sharps, G major has 1, D major has 2, A major has 3, and so on. This is just a resource that you guys can come back to, and later on I might come back to this page to find out, you know, what's in E major. Okay, moving on. Yes, so here is an example of a tune that you will know in a major key. So I'm sure you know this tune, I'll play it for you in a second. The melody notes have been marked with their scale degrees. This tune is in the key of C, so C equals 1, D equals 2, E equals 3, F equals 4, G equals 5, A equals 6, and B equals 7. Here's the tune, which you may have heard at the start of the recording when you tuned in. So just this short tune uses almost all the notes in the scale. It doesn't use number 7, but it does use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 1, 1, 5, 5, 6, 6, 5, 4, 4, 3, 3, 2, 2, 1. Now because we are barbershop singers and we love singing tags, and sometimes when people are teaching you tags, they'll hold up fingers on their hand like 1, 2, 5, whatever. What those numbers mean is the scale degrees. So if we're in the key of C and I'm singing C, then I'll sing 1, or I'll show a 1 with my fingers. So if I'm going, can't think of a tag to use now. Let's say I'm doing Through the Long and Lonely Night, and I go through the long and lonely night, I whisper your name. So that's 1. This one is 7. So you can do it on one hand. That's 6, and then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The rest of it is pretty straightforward. 7 is this one, and 1 is just the pinky by itself. So if you're wondering, that system was taught to me by Ricky from Sydney/Penrith. I think a lot of people use that system now, which is pretty cool. So scale degrees, that's what a tune looks like if you write out the scale degrees. It's quite a useful learning tool. I know a lot of singers like to think in numbers. Solfa is kind of the same thing, solfege, solfa. So except we've got different syllables, so it's do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, let's keep moving. Okay, natural minor scales. So the natural minor scale, which is also known as the Aeolian mode, is common in Western music, though not as common as the major scale. Every natural minor scale, no matter the starting note, the fundamental, has the same pattern of notes and semitones, of tones and semitones. We've got a question. I might quickly answer that question. Yes.
Yeah, sure. Just going back to your hand system, how are flats and sharps indicated on the fingers?
Okay. Good question. So usually we don't do sharps, we just do a flat version instead, because you can represent everything with flats, but basically you just crunch the finger like that. So that's 1, that's flat 1. Not that you would ever sing flat 1, but that would be 3 and that's flat 3. Well, that would be 5 and flat 5. You can cover all the notes you need by doing flats instead of sharps. It's not a perfect system, but it's pretty effective. Yeah. Minor scales. So the DNA pattern for a natural minor scale is tone, semitone, tone, tone, semitone, tone, tone. So it sounds like this. Here it is one more time. Now I'll say what intervals we've got as we go. So that's the fundamental. Then we got tone, semitone, tone, tone, semitone, tone, tone. So it's a different pattern to the major scale, and you would use this pattern for any natural minor scale. So if I start on a different note, whoops, forget that error, then it kind of sounds the same because it's also on natural minor scale. Yes, the natural minor scale is related to the major scale. If you play the notes of a major scale, but you begin on scale degree 6, you will hear the related natural minor scale. For example, if you play the notes of a C major scale, but you start on A, you will have the A natural minor scale. Hence, C major and A natural minor are related. So I'll play you what it sounds like. So this is the C major scale. I'm going to play those notes, but I'm going to start on A instead. So you can kind of tell that they're using the same keys, the same notes, but they have pretty distinctly different flavour and different sound. So same notes, different starting point, you get quite a different sound. Let's move on. Yes. So here is that well-known major scale tune from the example earlier, but now we've altered some of the notes to reflect a natural minor scale. The melodic notes have been marked with their scale degrees relative to a major scale. So where before we went 1 1 5 5 6 6 5, now we're going to go 1 1 5 5 flat 6 flat 6 5. So I'm numbering the notes in relation to the major scale. This tune is in the key of C natural minor, so C equals 1, D equals 2, E flat equals flat third, F equals 4, G equals 5, A flat equals flat 6, and B flat equals flat 7. So it goes like this. So you can see that only two notes, so the A has been altered to an A flat and the E has been altered to an E flat, but it really changes the tune, even though just two of the different kinds of notes we're using have been changed. If there was a B, it would have been changed as well, but there's no B in this melody. A question?
Yeah, how do you define or determine if a song is in a major or a minor key?
Oh, that's a big question. Is that Roger?
Troy.
It's Troy. Okay, yeah. You look at the piece of music and see what kind of chords are being used most frequently. If it's in a minor key, it might start on that minor chord or finish on that minor chord. I'm trying to think of an example. So, God Rest You Merry Gentlemen, which is one of our songs that we do, it starts on a F minor. So it's pretty clearly in a minor key because we have that minor sound right from the start. I'm trying to think of something else. Some tunes so if you remember Bare Necessities, that's in the key of F. Well, at least it is when you get to the chorus. So it's quite clearly in a bright major key. Look for the bare necessities. And yet the intro is in the related minor key. So instead of being in F, it's in B minor. Money and power will never bring you joy. So it starts in that moodier sounding related minor key. So hopefully that answers your question. Another big clue, which I'll mention quickly, is if you see a raised seventh. So if it's in D minor, you'll see a C sharp, which is the raised seventh. That's more harmonic minor, which we're going to come to in just a second. But that's another clue about whether it's in harmonic minor or a major key. So yeah, so that's, you heard that we just altered that melody by changing some of the notes, and you get quite a different sounding tune by turning it into a minor key. Another question.
Yeah. Is there any reason why composers don't just write the damn key on the sheet?
Probably not a good reason. I mean, I think they'll assume that you can figure it out if you look at the key signature. So the key signature will tell you. It won't tell you whether it's minor or major, but it'll tell you whether it's going to be, say, F major or D minor. But yeah, no, they usually don't. Maybe I'll start writing it on my music from now on. Change the way the world works. Let's go on. Okay, harmonic minor scales are good. We were just talking about this. So the harmonic minor scale is another common scale in Western music. Every harmonic minor scale, no matter the fundamental or starting note, has the same pattern of notes and tones and semitones. Dyslexic today. So tone, semitone, tone, tone, semitone, tone and a half, semitone. So a tone and a half, what's that? I hear you ask. So it's 3 semitones. You could also call it a minor third if you want to be very technical about this. So this pattern is the DNA of the harmonic minor scale. And here's something to note. The harmonic minor scale is only one note different to the natural minor scale. The 7th note, in this case B, has been raised by 1 semitone. So here's the harmonic minor scale. I remember when I was first taught this scale, my piano teacher said it sounds Egyptian, and I was like, yeah, okay. I think it's that last couple of notes that do it. So compare that. I'll play the natural minor scale again, so you can hear it with the flattened 7th. And now here's the harmonic minor again. So it's just that one note has changed. From what I see when I play some music that's in a minor key, that raised 7th is mostly to facilitate a nice dominant chord. So if I'm in C minor, playing a C minor chord, and I get to chord 5, the dominant chord, which is a G, it sounds kind of better if it's a G7. With that raised 7th in it, it resolves more cleanly than, say, if it still had the flattened 7th, the B flat. That's still quite pretty, but I don't think it's quite as strong a resolution as this. Because you get that nice leading note effect from the B natural to the C. So as far as I can tell, I'm not a music theorist by trade, but it seems to me that that's what the main function of that raised 7th is. Cool. Let's move on. Yay! My favorite section, chords. So, chords, when a group of notes is played or sung simultaneously, resulting in glorious harmony. Let's have some glorious harmony. Alrighty, so what is a chord? This is from Google. A chord in music is any harmonic set of pitches consisting of multiple notes. Also called pitches. Why does it say pitches twice? Okay, my mistake. Is any set of pitches consisting of multiple notes that are heard as if sounding simultaneously. That seems like there's a typo in there that I didn't catch. Anyway, by this definition, any combination of notes heard simultaneously is a chord. For our purposes, we're going to discuss common chord types including 3-note chords or triads and 4-note chords. So really, anything is a chord. This is a chord. This is a chord. This is a chord. This is a chord. Some of them are more commonly used than others. So yeah, any combination of notes is a chord. It's mainly the commonly used ones that have actual names. This chord here is, for a start, impossible for these 4 singers to sing because there's only 4 of them. But I just thought I'd throw that in as an example that this is a very interesting and heavily extended chord. Let's move on. Alright, how are chords represented in music? So a chord can be represented in standard notation as notes stacked on top of each other, like this. When you see notes written vertically, it means that they are to be played / sung at the same time. So that's how you know it's a chord and not a melody. They're stacked on top of each other. If they were broken apart, you might hear them all separately. But when you hear them together, that's a chord. We have a question.
Yeah, it could be a serious question. Mike wants to know if you can play the chord in the picture that was previous.
Okay, the bottom half looks like a C major 7, and then you've got an E flat, an F sharp, a B flat, and a D natural. Alright, let's try. My keyboard's not big enough. Hang on. There we go. I think it's a C major 7, flat 10, sharp 11, flat 7, add 9. Something like that. We could call up Gareth from Sydney and ask him how to tune that chord. Okay. Yeah, very serious question, Mike. Thank you very much. Let's have a look at chord. So how else are chords represented in music? So this is standard notation at the top here, what we read when we're singing barbershop. But chords can also be represented by chord symbols like this. So the G, the D / F sharp, and another G. These are frequently accompanied by guitar chord boxes. So that's what the little grid underneath is, showing you how to play that chord on the guitar. So let's talk about the chord symbols. Rather than telling you exactly which notes to play and in which configuration, as standard notation does, chord symbols tell you the chord of the moment, allowing the musician to choose which chord voicing to use. So if I'm playing along, someone puts some sheet music in front of me, and I see the G chord symbol up above, but it doesn't tell me how to play the chord exactly, then I just have to do it on the fly. So I had to do this a lot at jazz school. So I might play the chord in root position, or I might play it up here, I might add a bass note, I might play it like with as many notes as I can get my hands on. So it's kind of up to me to choose how to play that chord. So I could double notes, or I could invert the chord. There's lots you can do. There's lots of ways you can play a G chord with lots of different notes, with lots of keys on fingers on keys, and it's still a G chord. When you start adding notes from outside the G chord, that's like, so the G chord has G, B, and D. If you start playing notes other than G, B, and D, then it starts to become something else. But yeah, you're given, when you get sheet music like this, you're given some autonomy to play whatever voicing of the chord that you like. Yes, we have a question.
Troy asks, going back to the arranging session, when you started with melody, how did you get to having the guitar chords above the melody line?
Well, I took them from the sheet music. So I had sheet music for Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean, and it had those chords written above it. I could have figured them out myself, and I think I added a couple that weren't on the sheet music anyway. So yeah, and it's a tune that it's kind of got easy harmony that I could figure out by ear if I wanted to anyway. But yeah, if you say purchase some sheet music online, like at Sheet Music Plus or musicnotes.com or something like that, you'll usually get a little bit of what you see here. So you have the melody with the lyrics and then chord symbols written above, like that. And it's not always a perfect rendition of the song. Sometimes you have a little bit of creative license to muck around with it, but yeah, that's where it comes from, pretty much. Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. Let's move on. Okay, major chords. So, when you learn a musical instrument, such as piano or guitar, it's likely that the first chords you will learn to play are major triads and minor triads, which are basic three-note chords that are built in thirds, major third intervals and minor third intervals. You can build a major triad from its parent major scale. For example, if you want to build an E major triad, use the first, third, and fifth notes from the E major scale. In terms of scale degrees, a major triad is 1, 3, 5. So here's the E major scale. It sounds like this. And so to form an E major triad, I'm going to take the first note in the scale and the third note, which is G sharp, and the fifth note, which is B, and play them all together. It's a nice resonant E major scale, E major chord. Over on the right hand side here, it tells you what the chord tones are named. So the individual notes in a chord are called chord tones. In a triad, the chord tones are root, third, fifth. So the root is E, the third is G sharp, and the fifth is B. This is my preferred way to figure out what's in a chord. I find the parent major scale and I build the chord from there. We have a question.
Yeah, Troy asks, so could you explain why the second chord is D/F sharp in the previous example and not anything else if you are determining it from first principles?
Wait, what?
It could be an example before because we're a little bit behind.
Yeah. No, I know where the chord is. I didn't actually mention that bit. I should have spoken through that bit. Oh, gosh. No, what's going on? Okay. Yeah, I forgot to talk about this bit. Okay, so a slash chord, such as D/F sharp, tells you not only the chord but also the bass note. So usually a chord tone other than the root note. So in this case, so a D major chord has D, F sharp, and A. Sounds like that. When you see a chord symbol like this, it says D/ and then another note, it means play that second note in the bass as your lowest pitch. So there's an F sharp. So that's a D/F sharp. Usually if the bass note is the third, I would take out the third from the upper voicing. So F sharp in the bass, then D, then A. And I might even double the D as well to put another D at the top, like that. We'll play it down here maybe. And these slash chords are often used for nice voice leading. So the F sharp in the bass leads back to G, which is pleasing voice leading. Kind of makes it sound smooth. Yeah, so not every kind of music will notate chords this way. I like it. When I'm playing the piano or the guitar, I like to have that extra information there. You don't necessarily have to use the information every time you see it, but if you're playing some bass notes on the piano or even on the guitar, or if you're playing a bass guitar, that is very useful information and really helps the music, I think, to have a little bit more information on what the bass should be doing. Let's chords. Okay, so back to major chords. So yeah, we built the E major chord from its parent scale, which is the E major scale. This is my preferred way of building the chords, but I'll show you another way on the next slide. Okay, so we can also build chords from knowing the intervals within that chord. A major triad has a major third interval from the root note to the third, and then a minor third interval from the third to the fifth. So look at this little diagram here. From the root note C, we go up to a major third. So from C, we go up 4 semitones. And we have C to E. And then from E, we go up a minor third, which is 3 semitones. So we get a G on the top. So now we have C, E, and G. So that's one way you can build a major chord, is with a major third on the bottom and then a stack of minor third on top of that. Minor chords. Okay. So a minor chord is like a major chord, except that the third has been flattened, which means it was lowered by a semitone. So tenors, we see lots of flattened thirds and things in our tenor lines. In terms of scale degrees, a minor chord is 1, flat 3, 5, using the major scale as the parent scale. Here's how to build an E minor triad from its parent scale. We're using the E major scale again. So remember, our E major scale sounds like this. So we need the 1, 3, and 5. But what we're going to do is we're going to flatten the third. So it's going to go from a G sharp to a G natural. So that's a G sharp, it's going to become a G natural, and then the whole chord sounds like this. So that's our E minor chord, and it's written over here. So we've got the root note, the third, which is now flattened in relation to the major scale, the G natural, so it's been lowered from a sharp to a natural, and the B is the fifth. So we got the root note, the third, the fifth. And here's about the nomenclature of the chords. A lowercase m is used in the chord symbol to indicate the chord is minor. So you may remember, if I go back a couple of slides, oh, hang on, that's not a couple of slides up, that's a couple of slides down. Here we go. So this is how we label the E major chord. It's just a capital E, but when we have an E minor chord, you'd go capital E and then a lowercase m, so that we know it's a minor chord. If you're a guitar player, you'll be very familiar with that kind of naming system. Okay, let's move on. Ah, yes. So, is a minor triad built from different intervals to a major triad? I'm glad you asked. A minor triad is built from the same intervals as a major triad, but switched around. For a minor triad, we begin with a minor third, then add a major third on top. So, we're going to use C. From the root note C, we go up a minor third and get E flat. So I start with C, and I go up three semitones for a minor third. From the E flat, we go up a major third, which is 4 semitones. And we get G as our top note. So now we've got C, E flat, G. Now we've got a minor triad. So isn't that interesting that a minor chord is kind of like a major chord flipped around? So instead of starting with a major third on the bottom, we start with a minor third. But it still has a major third, it's just in the top half of the chord instead. Pretty sneaky stuff. Alright. Keep writing your questions in, guys, if you have questions. We're actually getting through this a lot faster than I thought I would, which is good. So, other chords, part 1. So below, and continued on the next slide, is a list of common chord types, starting with 3-note chords and moving to 4-note chords. Below each chord is the formula of the chord, numbers that refer to scale degrees in the major parent scale. So, in the case of a chord whose root note is C, the parent scale is C major. For a chord with F as the root, the parent scale is F major scale. So when we look at a C major chord, these numbers 1, 3, 5, they refer to the C major scale. And if I want, I can go all the way back. And I'll find a C major scale right there. Oops. And I'll zoom in on the C major scale. So here's where the numbers are referring to. It's referring to number 1, number 3, and number 5. C, E, G. To get that scale. Alright, let's go back where we were. Okay, so that's what the numbers are referring to. I call that the chord formula. 1, 3, 5. It'll be different for all the different chords. So this is the chord notation in root position. So stacked up as, you know, the root note, then the third, then the fifth. That's the chord symbol. So if you're looking at a piece of music and they want you to play the C chord, they'll write this, just a capital C. And up above I put the chord name, so you know what to call it if you're talking to somebody else about music theory. Yeah, I'm talking about a C major chord. On this page, you've got a variety of different 3-note chords. So we've already talked about our major triad and our minor triad. Here's some other interesting 3-note versions of chords. We've got a C suspended fourth, which is number 1, the scale degree 1, scale degree 4, and scale degree 5. C, F, and G all together. That's a C sus4 chord. Kind of related to that is the C sus2 chord. So it's scale degree 1, scale degree 2, and scale degree 5. I think these two chords are really pretty. Here's the sus4, and here's the sus2. Really nice chords, I really like them. Here's the C augmented chord. So what's happened here is it's a normal root note, it's a normal third, but scale degree 5 has been sharpened, so raised by a semitone. Kind of a spooky sounding chord, I think, or a mysterious kind of chord. So that's the C augmented, which is occasionally represented with a C plus. Sometimes I just write C and then AUG, aug, for augmented. The C diminished triad, so it's the root note is the same. The third has been flattened, and the fifth has been flattened as well. This chord is built out of a minor a minor third and another minor third. It's kind of also a kind of tense chord. I should say about the augmented chord, it's built out of 2 major thirds. So from the C to the E is a major third, and from the E to the G sharp is a major third. So it's almost like super bright because it's got 2 major thirds in it. So that's some different kinds of 3-note chords. Let's have a look at what's going on over here. Other kinds of chords. Okay. A C6th. This pops up a little bit in barbershop. That's the 6th chord. You may remember it came up a bit in My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. So when we get to My Bonnie lies over on the O chord, that would be a major 6th chord like this. So in a C6 chord, we use scale degree 1, 3, 5, and 6. Very jazzy sounding chord to my ears. Also sometimes uses to sound like a train whistle in certain songs. Because it has a little bit of tension in there. A C minor 6, also we love this in barbershop. So we've got scale degree 1, we've got a flat third, normal 5, normal 6. We love having this as the second last chord in a song. Like that. That happens a lot in barbershop. I'll put in an organ sound so you can hear it as an organ tone. Very common ending for a barbershop song. C major 7. So this is now we're starting to get into the 7th chords. So C major 7 has all these scale degrees are straight out of the major scale, and none of them have been altered. So you've got the 1st scale degree, 3rd, 5th, and 7th. So very pretty sounding chord. We sometimes use this. It's not heaps common, but when the melody's on the 7th, that's usually we get that kind of chord. This one should be familiar to us. So the good old barbershop 7th. So it's a normal 1, 3, and 5. So it's a major triad, but we've put the spicy flat 7 on the top. Let's hear it on the organ. So the barbershop 7th is interesting because it has stability in that major triad, and then it has this funky 7 on the top, which means the chord is not settled and it has sort of like harmonic tension that wants to resolve and wants to do something. So often we'll get a resolution like this. That's a C7, and it'll resolve to an F. So that's a good old barbershop 7th. I might just do this one more, and then I've got another little exercise for you to think about. I forgot that I didn't show the app. I better go back and show you were the app. Alright, I'll do that soon. Totally forgot. So a C minor 7th, we have these in barbershop too. Not heaps common, but they are there. So we have a regular 1, a flattened 3rd, a 5th, and a flattened 7th. And there's a certain Rod Stewart song that starts like this. Some of you know that song. That's a C minor 7th chord. I'll let you guys can have a look at these at home. But we get some pretty funky chords over here, so including this one which has a double flattened 7th. And this one which has a sharp 5 and a flat 7. And this one which has a flat 3rd and a regular 7. That one sounds interesting. I'll just play this one for you. Very spooky kind of chord. Whenever I hear this chord, I always think, I'll get you next time, Spider-Man. It's kind of like the villain's chord, just as the villain slinks away. Anyway, so what we're going to do now is I thought we might do a little bit of a chord spelling exercise. So we're going to pick, we'll pick a root note and a chord quality, and then we'll spell it out. And we can't use C because all the answers for C are right here. Maybe Geordie, can you give us a fundamental note other than C?
A.
A, okay. And do you want to have a look? Do you want to do like a 6th chord, a minor 6th chord, a major 7, a 7, a minor 7? Any of these grab your fancy?
Minor 6, please.
Minor 6. All right. Geordie's asked us to deliver an A minor 6 chord. So the first thing I do is I look at my formula. So 1, flat 3, 5, 6. I'll memorize that. 1, flat 3, 5, 6. And then I'm going to go back to find the A major scale, which is written up here somewhere. Here we go. Here's our A major scale. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. There we go. Maybe a little bit less. Okay. So, in A major scale, we need 1, flat 3, 5, and 6. So I'm just going to play them on the keyboard as we figure them out. So we got 1 is A, a flat third. So the third is normally a C sharp, but if I flatten a C sharp, it becomes a C natural. Then we need a 5, which is E, and then we need the 6th, which is F sharp. So that sound, that's our A minor 6. And it wants to resolve to this. If you could only see the look on Geordie's face. Alright, can you actually, let's ask the guys, can you submit a chord for us to figure out? We might do maybe 2 or 3 more. So what you need to do is choose a root note, so anything other than C. So you might choose D or G flat or B flat or D sharp or something, anything other than C. And then I'll just scroll down to this other page here. Pick one of these 4-note chords and we'll figure it out. So you might, for example, ask for a B flat augmented 7th. So you just replace the C with whatever note you've chosen. B flat augmented 7th. Or you might say, I want an A flat 6. Or I want a B7. Or I want a F minor 7. So we'll take a couple of suggestions and we'll figure them out for you.
First one. From Troy, a C sharp diminished 7th.
Okay. So, alright, a diminished 7th. It looks like the formula is 1, flat 3, flat 5, double flat 7. I'm going to need to get out the pencil and paper to figure this one out. 1, flat 3, flat 5, double flat 7. Okay. Then I'll go find the C sharp scale. You had to pick the one with 7 sharps, didn't you? Where's the C sharp scale? Here it is, down the bottom here. There's our C sharp scale. So we need a 1, which is a C sharp. We need a flattened third. It says E sharp. I'm good. So if I flatten an E sharp, it just becomes an E. We need the 5 needs to be flattened. So the normal 5 would be G sharp. I'm going to flatten that. And then the 7 is normally a B sharp. And I'm going to flatten that. Actually, I'm going to double flatten the 7th. And so now I've got C sharp, E, G, and C flat, B flat. I'm going to figure out exactly what to call that note. There you go. I hope you're happy, Troy.
Troy wants you to add an augmented 9th to it.
Troy. You got it, Troy. An augmented 9th. Well, hang on. No, that's the same as the minor third. It's just gonna. You already got that note in there, Troy. Okay.
Mike wants a B flat 7th.
Good old B flat 7th, eh? That's a good old barbershop-y chord. Let's go find what our... Okay, so that's a barbershop 7th, that kind of chord. So we want 1, 3, 5, flat 7. So memorize that. 1, 3, 5, flat 7. And then I go find my B flat major scale, which is on this page. There's our B flat scale. So we need 1. We need 3. We need 5. Then we need to flatten the 7th. So instead of A, it's going to be A flat. That's a satisfying chord, isn't it? So that's a B flat major 7.
Can you make it a B flat minor 7th quickly?
Oh, sure. So all you need to do is change the third. So the root note, the third, the 5th, the flat 7. So I'm going to change the third to a D flat. It's a pretty chord, very pretty. Cool. Good one. How about one more? Okay, we're not getting one. Do you want to give us another one? How about a really, or I could just suggest a really tricky one.
Yeah.
Well, Troy already did a pretty tricky one. How about one of my favorite kinds of chords is a 7 suspended fourth. So, how about we'll do D7 sus4. So, 1, 4, 5, flat 7. That's the formula. 1, 4, 5, flat 7. I'm going to go find the D major scale. Yep, here we go. Okay, so we need 1, we need 4, which is G, we need 5, which is A, and the normal 7th would be C sharp. If I flatten a C sharp, it becomes a normal C. And that's our D7 sus4. Might play it up higher. The really cool thing about these chords is if you have a sus4 chord, you can take the 4 and just lower it by 1 semitone and it becomes a third. Nice resolution. So that's a D7 sus4 changing to a D7.
One more from Troy, Dan.
Oh Lord, what is it?
A double flat minor augmented.
No, that doesn't make any sense, Troy. Minor augmented. Doesn't make sense. An A double flat is
You
G.
called his bluff.
Let's just assume it's A flat. Oh, but minor augmented doesn't mean anything either. It's just like an E major chord, really. Alright, serious suggestion now, Troy. Okay, so, well, I've reached the end of my presentation, and ahead of time I was expecting that to take at least an hour and a half. Oh, yes, there is one thing I forgot to do, which is the app. So, let's go back to the intervals, because I'm going to show you guys an app that I like to use for ear training. Intervals, here we go. So the app is called Earworthy. It has a few different functions. It has one you can just test yourself on guessing notes, like for perfect pitch training, intervals, scales, and chords. I'm just going to use the interval function for now. The great thing about this is you can customize which intervals you train yourself on. So just for the sake of an example, I'm going to turn off all the intervals but 2. So I'm going to have a minor second. That's the smallest kind of interval, like Jaws, the Jaws movie, and an octave, which is the largest one in common use, which is like Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Somewhere over the rainbow. And then when you hit the button in the middle, it just plays one of those randomly. And you have to guess which one it is. So it's a minor second. And it ticks you if you get it right. It's another minor second. Another minor second. Lots of minor seconds today. Hooray, an octave. So it tests you. And I'll show you, if I go to the settings, I can turn on all the other intervals. This is called Earworthy. Is your ear worthy? And now I've got all the intervals on. Oh yeah, that one sounds like that Chili Pepper song that I like. Ba 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 ba. Or also, there's a place for us. So I know that that's a minor seventh because I'm looking at my chart. Minor seventh. Tick. That sounds like Jaws. This must be a minor second. What's a minor second? Next one. Another minor second by the sounds of it. That sounds like The Simpsons, which is a tritone. TT tritone. What's next? Ba ba. This is the one that reminds me of King Kong, which is the minor sixth. I'll do a couple more until I get it wrong. Ooh. I think that sounds like the Take On Me by Aha. I hope. Yay! Alas, my love, you do me wrong. I think that's a minor third. Like Green Sleeves. One more. My Bonnie lies over the ocean. I think it's a major sixth. M6. Anyway, yeah, so that's earworthy. I hope it's still in the App Store because I really like this app. I think I paid a few dollars to get the full version, where you can just change the settings to test yourself on any intervals at all, and it's really handy because you start with just like a handful of intervals and then you gradually add them all as you get used to hearing them all and identifying them. Really good for training your ears if you're interested in that, doing that kind of thing at home. Would recommend. Ear worthy. Good. Do we have any more questions coming through?
Just checking now.
Okay. I'm really glad we got through this presentation because I was expecting to take quite a while, but we got through it. Okay, any questions? Nope. Alright, cool. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I will send out this presentation to you in PDF form. So if you want to make yourself some homework by figuring out how to spell some chords, that's a good way to test your music theory skills, or to practice your interval recognition, or practice some scales. I'll send all this out so you can do all that at home. Thanks to Geordie for being here and setting up the tech for us. And thanks for your questions, guys. We had some good questions tonight. So I hope you enjoyed Music Theory 2 and it was answered some of your favourite questions. We'll say goodbye for now. I'll play you out with some techno music like before.